Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really epic, cinematic, historical underdog story to extract some absolutely incredible leadership lessons. We are looking closely at a script titled Badr, the Cinematic Triumph of Faith. And while it outlines a famous historical battle underneath the surface, it literally reads like a masterclass in crisis management, resource allocation, and strategic leadership. Picture this. Imagine you are facing a massive organizational crisis. You're completely outnumbered. How does a leader bridge that monumental gap to achieve what looks like an impossible win? When you're staring down a 3-to-1 disadvantage, standard operating procedures usually just don't cut it. You have to rely on something else entirely. To figure out how they did it, we're going to break this down into 4 key areas. First, facing impossible odds. Second, vision and absolute trust. Third, discipline and execution. And finally, the leadership legacy. All right, section 1, facing impossible odds. Just think about the sheer scale of this management deficit. The script sets the scene right at dawn in this vast desert, pitting just 313 believers against a formidable, heavily armed force of nearly 1,000 enemies. In any organizational context, being outnumbered 3-to-1 means you have drastically fewer resources, way less manpower, and statistically, a highly improbable chance of success. The source script hits the nail on the head here, stating, by every worldly measure, victory seemed impossible, right? If you were looking at a standard risk assessment, the recommendation would almost certainly be an immediate retreat. But as this text brilliantly shows us, leadership isn't just about the raw numbers on a spreadsheet. Moving right along to section 2, vision and absolute trust. So, what happens the night before? It's absolutely critical. The script details that before taking any action, the Prophet Muhammad turned to Allah in sincere supplication. Now, as a leadership action, this establishes a deeply unified and focused vision for the camp during a highly tense night. It completely sets the tone. Instead of panicking over the numbers, the leadership focused the organization on a much higher purpose, grounding the group and preparing them mentally and spiritually for the massive task ahead. And this illustrates a core management principle. The physical lack of personnel was directly countered by the believers placing their complete trust in their leadership and their shared vision despite the odds. The script specifically notes that they placed complete trust in Allah. In an organizational context, when your physical deficit is that high, your intangible trust must be equally high. Trust is literally the bridge between what you have and what you actually need to achieve. Which brings us to section 3, discipline in execution. The text outlines a really clear chronological sequence here. We start in the tension of the night with supplication, move into the harsh reality of the dawn standoff, and culminate on a highly specific historical date, the 17th of Ramadan 2A. This timeline shows us that victory wasn't just some lucky accident. It was a carefully sequenced process of intense preparation leading directly to action. And when the action finally kicks off, it is incredibly controlled. The script highlights that this small army didn't just chaotically fight. They advanced with intense discipline and courage. Those are the direct mechanisms for securing a decisive victory. Listen, in any project or crisis, especially when you are severely under-resourced, discipline and execution is your absolute strongest weapon. You simply cannot afford mistakes. Every single person has to act with courage and strict adherence to the strategy. That disciplined execution yielded incredible results. The source material tells us that Allah granted the Muslims a decisive victory, cementing Badr as the first major battle in Islamic history. But more importantly, from a management perspective, the script notes that this victory permanently strengthened the Muslim community. Surviving and winning a crisis with limited resources doesn't just solve the immediate problem. It permanently upgrades the strength, cohesion, and the overall capability of your entire organization going forward. Finally, let's wrap up with section 4, the leadership legacy. The script concludes with this beautiful visual of a sunrise over the plains, and it totally flips the script. It contrasts the conventional reliance on physical numbers or strength alone against the true, intangible metrics of success. It's asking us to look past the spreadsheets. Yes, the believers were drastically outnumbered, 313 to nearly 1,000, but they won because they were operating on a completely different set of metrics. There's this amazing quote from the legacy scene that just nails the whole thesis of our explainer today. True victory comes through faith, patience, unity, and trust in Allah, not numbers or strength alone. Sustainable success, especially when you are facing overwhelming odds, isn't just about the physical resources you possess. If it were, the larger army would have won by default, right? So the crucial takeaway here is that these four traits, faith, patience, unity, and trust, serve as your ultimate organizational toolkit for bridging any resource gap. Faith gives you the vision to see past the impossible. Patience allows you to endure the gripping tension of the standoff. Unity ensures your small team moves as one cohesive unit, exactly like we saw with their disciplined advance. And trust keeps everyone securely anchored to the leadership and the overall mission. As we wrap this up, I'm going to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought based on this historical case study. When you are facing your own impossible odds, are you relying solely on the numbers on a page? Or are you actively cultivating the faith, discipline, and unified trust required to actually win? The Battle of Badr shows us that, with the right culture and execution, the numbers absolutely do not always get the final say. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.